My name is Mankebe Seakgoe and I am a visual storyteller. I studied fine art at Wits University and graduated during COVID times. It was 2020 and have been practicing, I guess, art for most of my life, but professionally since varsity. I make multimedia work. It's stories, thoughts, poetry for the most part. So the kind of feeling that one gets from actual words. I think it came from a struggle to communicate verbally. So growing up, we moved around quite a bit, and so in that, I had to, in order to learn language, kind of pull back and listen more than I spoke, and that kind of led my mind to process things very, very quickly, and I almost can't match the pace, and so I struggled with speaking, and so when I was making work, I didn't feel like it communicated what I wanted to communicate, and so I started writing as a way to understand myself. So they started as conversations with self, and then you get all of this. At first, it started as a kind of struggle with the image of self. So I didn't really resonate with pictures of me, and so I was I was on the search for images of people that felt like me, and that led me to archives of staged photography, and that opened up a world for me where it's these are people that are standing in front of a camera, presenting a version of self that they feel is true, the truest version of them that they want the world to see. And I connected with those images, and I kind of got stories from them that I couldn't really tell through images, and then it became writing, I guess, in communication with the subject of the image, and thus communication with self, because it was a recognition of self in the other. It's still a bit of a mystery to me. I guess it's more intuitive than anything. It's usually a kind of meditative state that I put myself in. So the last one was kind of trying to find what home was or is. I'm still trying to figure it out. So that's what you'll see here on the floor. So I went searching for home in water, and so communicating through water, and that led to painting, which I hadn't done for a while. So it really depends on what it calls for. So sometimes I try things and it doesn't work, and then you try something else. It's more of a feeling, something that what feels right. Maybe it's a frequency of language, and so it kind of became this dance. So I started seeing the work exist as a dance. So you have to interact with this, you have to kind of dance around it to make up the image. It came from this idea of dreams. So it's in between a dream space, so kind of waking up from a dream, and you're in between two worlds. So that dance of kind of being awake to this reality, but also you physically feel like you're somewhere else. I guess always continuing. It's almost like a continuing thought. So when I start working, it's like a silence, it's calls for silence. So there's no like interruption from any kind of sound outside. So I've started listening to music. Before I could just like work and just tune out any noise, but with like all the writing around, I can almost hear it. So I've started listening to music. So just listening to one song on repeat, I can almost like jump in and out of a thought. The last show I did was at Stevenson, and it was a group show titled I Miss Myself the Most. And that was, the work that I presented for that was this dream. It was a dream, so it was this alongside another work. So they were a conversation. So these also exist as these like 3D renditions of the flat work. So it's almost as if it comes out and you're able to jump into the world of the thoughts. And before that, I showed in a duo exhibition with Tsonghoi Lauren Lee at BKZ Gallery. And that was titled I Hear You. So it was a conversation between Lauren and myself. We were individually looking at communicating through elements. So my work was looking at communicating through water, and hers was looking at communication through air. And so it was like as above, so below, kind of reflecting each other. And so it's like these things that are being said and not understood, but we kind of understood each other. So that was where we were hearing each other and kind of mirroring each other as well. I'm not sure if we all kind of have this thing where we need to find ourselves in relation to like where we are in the world. And there's this poem actually that I've been obsessed with recently titled Lost. So it's this idea that when you do feel lost, you can kind of go out into nature, and the trees around you and the bushes around you, the rivers, everything is in its place. And you can always come back to that, recognize that everything is in its place, and so you are also in the right place. I'm always asking questions, and I think knowing where I come from is very reassuring to where I would like to be, and it also allows for this like in between space to flow, so I don't feel lost in the world.
Do you have a piece that says, "Here I am now"?
Pieces.
Okay.
And I think by pieces, I think it's because they kind of all come together to make an image of self. So that's this one here. It's a continuing installation, so it kind of changes as it falls apart and is remade. So this is actually a portrait of me. The first that I've ever made that actually felt like me. Like when I looked at it, I was like, oh yeah, that looks like me. It started with beads. So I was working with beads. I was thinking about light, because there was this guy who once told me that I carry myself through the world like I'm wallpaper when I'm actually a chandelier. And I thought about that for like a while. I was like, what does that mean? What does that mean? And then I started like obsessively looking at chandeliers. So like entering a space and looking up and like, what is this thing that exists and how do I relate to this thing? So I would always walk into a space and look up. So I started kind of working from the ceiling. And at that time I had these cables. I don't actually know what they are. I found them. There was a point where I was like searching for material, so I'd find them everywhere. I didn't know what they were, but I was like, these colors. So I would collect them, and so from the beads, I was very interested in the way that light would go through them, and like the colors. I was like, color. And I was never like a color person, so that was fun. I felt like a child again, where you're kind of discovering new things, which was great because that's the kind of space that I wanted to be in terms of like finding myself.